Support for This News is So Gay comes from the LGBTQ Opportunity Fund of the Cleveland Foundation, leveraging philanthropy to empower LGBTQ communities. Welcome to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck, editor of the Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ newsroom. Thanks so much for joining us. An art exhibit has been canceled due to LGBTQ censorship. What are you not going to be seeing up on the walls of the Smithsonian? Bathroom access continues to be restricted for trans Americans. Just how bad is it getting? The Trump administration has their erasers at the ready, looking for more opportunities to scrub queer history. Who is the latest target? And Kim Davis. Remember her? Why on earth are we still talking about her? Joining us this week to answer those questions and so many more are staff writer for the Buckeye Flame, a core member via Report for America, and until someone tells us differently, the only rural LGBTQ beat reporter for any newsroom in the world, Ben Jodway. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Ken. So happy to be here.
It's great to have you just on the other side of the wall from me. So this is a
Yes,
new
if I
experience.
look over the monitor, I can maybe see you.
I will wave. Founder of 3+1 Media, a thought leader, an advocate, and curator of the Colored Section Substack, Zackory Kirk. Zackory, so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me to join this amazing podcast. I'm really excited to be here and happy to be here. Do a lot of great content around these issues. So super excited to share this with your audience and to share you with my audience.
I love it. Cross promotion. And finally, writer, travel expert, former CEO of Pride Media, editorial director of The Advocate, Out and Plus magazine, and currently the executive director of GALECA. Is it GALECA? Is that how we say it?
We pronounce it multiple different ways. I just call it GALECA the whole time, but they tell me it's GALECA.
So none of those I had correct, which is the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics. Diane Anderson-Minshall. Diane, it's so great to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm just thrilled to wake up alive every day now. So I haven't been disappeared.
Okay, Diane has set the standard for this week's episode, and that means our LGBTQ Reporters Roundtable is now assembled. So let's dive in. An upcoming show at the Smithsonian was canceled after the Smithsonian tried to remove one of the paintings, and we will always have to talk about censorship, it seems. Zackory, first, tell our listeners what happened here.
So we need to take a brief kind of journey back into time to really understand Amy Sherald and how important she is to pop culture and to art as a whole. You may know that name from the beautiful depiction that she made of former First Lady Michelle Obama. She did her official portrait. I mean, many of us have seen that image. It's stunning. It was a beautiful piece. And she had a new exhibit scheduled for the Smithsonian. And so what happened was she decided to cancel her show. It was called American Sublime. After the Smithsonian wanted to remove a piece that depicted the Statue of Liberty as a trans woman. And that particular piece was called Transforming Liberty. And this artist is standing by her work, standing by her belief system and saying, if this piece isn't something that is acceptable for you to be shown, then we're not going to have the exhibit at all. So she pulled the exhibit. And I think this is just such a heartbreaking moment in our history of where this is happening more and more. So that's kind of the background on that. And Amy Sherald, and kind of like, I guess, passes it back to you and opens the floor for the discussion around this censorship.
I pivot to you, Diane. You've been writing about arts and culture for a few years. One could argue for a few years you've been writing about arts and culture. It is quite unbelievable, is it not, that we are still talking about censorship of LGBTQ art?
Well, at this point, it's actually not unbelievable. I was just talking with somebody young recently about Jerome Kaja. And I remember I hung out with Jerome. He was an artist back in the early 90s, late 80s. And I remember hanging out with him in New Orleans and doing a profile of him and his work back in like 1990. And he died from AIDS complications. And the newspaper, the gay paper I wrote for then, is also went out of business. But it's sort of his legacy lived on in this way that he did this very controversial work because he was queer and also very in your face and very trans fluid, even though we didn't call that trans imagery at the time. He had a lot of that. And he worked with mixed materials like nail polish and makeup. And even I thought it was kind of weird because I was 20 and hadn't been exposed to art yet. That stuff is now so commonplace to find artists who do that. But I think the deal with Kaja is he was being boycotted then. People were trying to censor him then, and people are trying to censor folks now. But he's a reminder sort of the importance of both free speech and radical self-expression in America, because we are going through this very hateful culture war right now that is targeting, in particular, trans people, but also all LGBTQ people. So, but I think that generally censorship goes hand in hand with loss of freedom. And globally, we're seeing that for LGBTQ folks. You know, we saw it first in Russia and Hungary, but we are seeing it here. And we've been seeing it grow here in the US for the last few years with queer and trans books being banned from schools and then libraries. And they're stepping up each of their sort of transgressions. And now it's moving into, as institutions are being faced with, you will get no money or you will show this image, you know. And I think artists are going to be facing this issue more and more, whether to pull out of something like this or not. I think it was a brave decision because, you know, artists, they live by the show. But I think that this is somebody who had enough resources to make that decision that wasn't just a purely economic one, but was able to go that way. But I think we're going to see more and more of this, not less and less.
And you think about it, Ben and I were talking about this on the car ride over. Russia, Hungary, and Cincinnati. It is 35 years since the Mapplethorpe exhibit was censored in Cincinnati. And when I talk about that with folks, having researched Cincinnati's LGBTQ plus history, it's like, whoa, that was 35 years ago. And yet now it feels like, well, no, that could have been a couple weeks ago. And it wasn't really that long ago.
I mean, again, I think there's many cities in the middle of America. You say we've got an exhibit from a famous photographer. He's got a bullwhip up his ass. You're going to have protests right now along the way. It's not just Cincinnati. This is where we are in our culture wars right now.
I think that was Diane announcing her new art exhibit that is coming to Cincinnati very soon. All right. So obviously a lot to keep our eye on with censorship there. Moving on, according to a new report, an alarming number of trans people live in a state with a policy that restricts bathroom access. And we certainly are in one of those states here, Ben. Just how alarming is that number, and what do those bans look like?
The number is very alarming. According to that report, which was also reported by NBC Out, that number is more than a quarter of trans Americans live in a state with some sort of bathroom ban. And those bans range from anywhere from just a governmental buildings ban to just K through 12 public schools to both. And Ohio, I believe, is both. It's pretty alarming in how it's becoming kind of like a meme that's been going around online of a screenshot from a show called Gravity Falls, where it shows like a picture of the United States and certain states are crossed out and it says states I can't go to. And that's becoming more of a reality for trans Americans. And right now, it's just a weird place to be in because these threats are not only to trans people, but this affects everyone. The cis women can also be transvestigated by people. There was that instance of two cis women in a Massachusetts hotel who were asked by a security guard to see their IDs and everything. So it's pretty alarming, and these bans don't look like they're going away.
No, and in fact, we've taken it further here in Ohio. We talked about this a few weeks ago with the new ban that was just passed. They banned all menstrual products from public men's restrooms. So we're not only banning people, but we're banning availability of menstrual products. And indeed, it looks like, Ben, the Trump administration is actively taking action against states in this bathroom access area.
Yeah, so there was a report that came out from 7 News. Basically, it looked like a Northern Virginia school district in I think it's around Arlington. The Department of Education alleged that their bathroom and locker policies were violating federal law and the executive order about the two immutable sexes. So they believe that there was a violation because the school district policy was to just take any bathroom or locker that fits your gender identity. They are claiming it is a Title IX issue, which is interesting because Title IX is meant to protect students from discrimination, and now it's being used to discriminate against students. It looks like they said that if things don't change soon, they are going to forward it to the Department of Justice. So it is something that is developing, but I'm sure this is just causing more of that chilling effect in schools, already being hamstrung by budget cuts at both the state and federal level.
We were talking about history with the last topic, Diane, and it's been nearly 10 years since North Carolina, their ban
Yeah.
on bathroom access sparked a backlash. And I remember all of those conversations. Well, it wasn't that long ago, but still, I remember those conversations 10 years ago. And everyone's saying, well, gosh, we're going to push back on this. It seems worse now, is it not?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, you think about when HB2 happened in North Carolina, there was a huge nationwide protest and corporate boycotts, and the NCAA pulled out 7 championship sporting events from there. And, eventually their General Assembly put it on moratorium in order to stop the boycotts, basically. So we had this very effective thing there until MAGA came along, basically. And Project 2025, and this is one of the key elements, and it's a cornerstone element for them because basically what they want to do is legislate transgender people out of existence. And this is one of the fundamental ways. You get them to stay in their homes because they can't go to the bathroom. A lot of people say, well, this is just K through 12 schools, or this is just government-owned buildings. And if you think about it, actually airports are government-owned buildings, for example. So my husband's transgender, so we have to look at if we're going to travel someplace, is there any places where our layovers can be safe states? So you have to rely both on the location to have a gender neutral bathroom still, a family bathroom, which is not in every place. And then if not, then you risk breaking this law. But if you're somebody who looks very binary into the gender, their current gender, their chosen gender, preferred gender, whatever you want to say, their real gender, then they can't really just go back into the other gender's bathroom, right? So I was explaining this recently to somebody else. I was bullied for a year in 4th grade. And so I wouldn't use the bathroom at school during the day. I would just hold it all day long, which means you don't really try not to drink anything. You hold it all day long so you don't pee, which obviously causes urinary tract issues and stuff like that. And I would get out of school and then I would run and I would invariably pee my pants. So I would sit in the gutters where there was water flowing down invariably from people watering their lawns back then, because 1970s, we still did that. And so that my mom didn't know that I was peeing my pants at school every day. But I just think about how horrible that was and how much the bullying was bad, but the trauma of having to hold it all day long, it caused me decades of therapy to just get over doing that habit and stuff. And so we're asking legions of kids to do that. And we know they're already doing it preemptively. And their goal is to take this, not just K through 12, not just government-owned buildings. There's already bills out there to make this in private buildings as well. So they can mandate what your business does and whether your business allows you to respect people's genders. That's the next step.
Yeah, the Ohio law, it restricts restroom access at private colleges as well. And as a professor at a private college, I will not forget last year a trans female professor coming up to me, because we've written about this a ton at the Buckeye Flame, and a trans female professor coming up to me and saying, I just want to be clear, this doesn't affect me, right? No. It 100% affects you here at our small private college in Ohio. Zackory, when you look at the bathroom access, a lot of the think pieces that are out there right now pair talking about bathroom access with all of these other bills that Diane just mentioned of restrictions on the LGBTQ plus community, and some making linkages to this being a failure of the Democratic Party right now to have a legislative approach that is effective. I know that you recently spoke with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries about strategy, and it was a wonderful chat, and I urge everyone to see your conversation with him. Did you learn anything there that might shed some light on effective Democratic strategy?
Yes. The strategy is win back the House, right? That's a strategy. And, it's really, I love that you brought up the fact that, because this is something I've actually been spending a lot of time on and really trying to craft good content that's really hard to create around the notion of people being angry at Democrats for what Republicans are doing. People are being angry or getting angry at Democrats for what Republicans are doing because the reality is you, the people, voted for Republicans who are not doing what is in the best interest of you, the American people. But instead of looking at the problem, you, the voter, we're putting the blame on the Democratic Party, the opposition party, who has absolutely no legal pathway of being able to circumvent what is happening. People are putting criticism and pressure on Democrats. A lot of that, if not all of it, needs to go towards Republicans because they are the only ones who can do anything to change the course of what we, the people, set into motion with the 2024 election until the 2026 elections roll around and we are able to retake the House. And that is the focus, the laser-like focus of Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Now, if you want to go bigger and you want to go a little bit more broadly beyond the conversations, because that's what we focused on with Speaker Jeffries, but I was also able to talk to a number of other members of Congress recently, and I kind of pulled that together in preparation for this question, in that they have a strategy that's right now focused on, again, the big goal is to win back the House, but if people who are out there wondering how are they going to do that, grassroots organizing that's extremely aggressive across the United States, targeting all 50 states, clear opposition to the Trump agenda, specifically to Project 2025 and these horror hellscapes that are coming to fruition in our nation. That is also a huge part of it. And then finally, it's about looking at and having bold policy proposals to motivate the base and appeal to swing voters. That's what the Democratic Party is trying to do. Mobilize the base, but also appeal to swing voters. And, whether I agree with that or not, that's kind of what I was able to pull together from all the interviews that I have out there. And they're investing, a significant amount of resources in every single state to bolster state parties to be on the ground and committed to moving the work forward. And so I think, to me, I'm very proud of Leader Jeffries. I'm very proud of kind of the work that's moving. And I'm proud of you, Ken. I'm proud of this platform for giving a voice to be able to elevate that, because I don't think enough Americans kind of know what's happening, because people are relying on traditional news outlets to give them their news. And right now, when I turn on MSNBC or I turn on CNN or I turn on ABC or CBS, all I'm seeing is the Epstein files. All I'm seeing is more of the Trump circus. I'm not seeing what are the Democrats actually doing that could be making a difference at this moment, but it's out there and it's happening. And I have to search and scour to find it unless I have independent news platforms like this that can give me that. So thank you for what you're doing.
I stopped listening to you after you said, "I'm proud of you, Ken." So I assume there were other words there, but that's where I stopped. And thank you. So yes, some misplaced anger there, and we're seeing that a lot. Whew, a lot more to come there. All right. I cannot believe I am about to say these next two words. Kim Davis. Kim Davis is back in the news. Yes, Kim Davis, the Kentucky County Clerk who chose jail more than a decade ago rather than issue a marriage license to a same-sex couple. Diane, I can't believe we're still talking about Kim Davis. Why are we still talking about Kim Davis? What's the latest?
I do know that she has been, let's just say, canonized by the MAGA right. So she's like one of their central hero figures for choosing jail over just getting out of the way and letting a couple get married. So I have seen successively that she has, been in the news for that, but I haven't seen the latest. So what is the latest?
Kim has apparently she's really just redoubling the efforts to get the Supreme Court to ban marriage equality. And so we are talking about marriage equality. It's in the news. It seems like every other week at this point. And I went back into the Diane Anderson-Minshall vault for this one, a 2017 piece where you wrote this, Diane, and I'm going to read it. Quote, "That's the rub about marriage. Many of us don't know we want it until we know we really can have it. Thinking it's just a formality, merely a piece of paper that protects our rights as LGBT people to marry, many queer folks are surprised to discover that things do change when you marry legally in ways we may never have known in generations past." End quote. Well done, Diane, in 2017. How do you look, it is now 8 years later, how do you look, Diane, at marriage equality now in our political landscape than maybe what you were writing about then?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, actually. When Trump was running for president, I remember speaking with some of Trump's supporters who are old high school friends, and they were saying, look, gay marriage is done. They called it gay marriage. Gay marriage is done. The Supreme Court has ruled. It's the law of the land. We're not going back, right? But I remember that about Roe v. Wade as well. So I think that if you read Project 2025, as I did in its entirety, I know it's tedious because it's like 400 pages, but it outlines all of these plans, and they're just going after one after another. So after Roe v. Wade fell, it's very clear that their next objective is to remove entitlement for same-sex marriage. Now, what is really different about it than the very first time, because we were fighting, my generation and even the boomers were fighting for the rights to marriage, and at some point, even people who didn't, necessarily want to get married themselves, who were like, oh, God, the whole point of being gay is not marrying, even those folks came out in support of same-sex marriage because we started to see those like 1,300 and plus benefits that were only available to people who were married, So everybody sort of rallied around this as a cause, pushed it through, took however long, over a decade of really hard work to get it through, and then it became law. And that was partly because more people knew gay people. And so they were like, oh, they're just like us, or they're a family member, or love is love. The slogans that worked back then were those kinds of things. And now you've had a generation of kids, maybe, sort of Gen Z and Gen Alpha who've grown up where this is just, of course same-sex people can marry each other. If they're little gay kids, they already are dreaming about their marriages. And they're just, I have a relative who is underage, who's, already dreaming about their lesbian weddings. So I think it's a given for them. So now you're going to take away a right from people who have known nothing else, So for us older folks, we're going to be like, oh, write it out. This is a cycle. We'll get it back. All those things that people told us who had been through, the bar busts and all the legal shutdowns with police and raids and stuff like that, told us in the 80s and 90s to just, hang in there. These are cycles. And we were like, F that, Queer Nation this, ACT UP that, we're not going to wait. Well, now you have two generations out there who have expectations that this is their life, and you're going to take away an existing right for them if you get it taken away. So it's a fight we should be keeping on.
We will be keeping on that. Again, folks, you are listening to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck from the Buckeye Flame. I'm joined this week by Ben Jodway, also from the Buckeye Flame, Zackory Kirk from 3+1 Media, and Diane Anderson-Minshall from the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics. The Trump administration continues its assault on LGBTQ plus history, doing everything they can to erase the contributions of LGBTQ plus Americans. Ben, the latest target, bisexuals?
Yeah, this one really rubs the history major in me. I mean, it's been rubbing me for a while, but to see this again, they just tried to erase, or they did erase the T from LGBT when talking about the Stonewall history marker. And they did the same thing online for bisexuals, according to Aaron Reed. From the pages online, they took out bisexuals after it was gay, lesbian, bisexuals, LGB, and just had gay and lesbian. And it was like that for a while. And I do want to mention that they did put bisexual back in again, but only for the front page. I don't know if they did it for the other pages. So it's this really weird thing that just happened. But the way I can kind of see it is that this administration is doing this by erasure because it kind of flies in the face of a lot of the conversation about not just like, queer history and LGBTQ plus rights, obviously, but also like the fact that sexuality and gender are not always a binary thing, that there's something that can be fluid, that there's ability to be both, which if that's the argument for bisexual people, you can apply that to transgender people who they're trying to erase. So I see this as another way to just slowly chip it away in ways that just you like blink and you miss it sort of way, or at least that's what they're trying to do.
And I know that you wrote about LGBTQ plus history erasure for the Buckeye Flame. How have these cuts affected Ohio?
Yeah, so it affected Ohio by us losing 10 LGBTQ plus historical markers. Well, not losing, but they just were not installed. There were $250,000 grant from the Institution of Museum and Library Services. They had this grant, and when it was already underway, people were working on this for a little bit, I think at least a year. And then when the Trump administration took office and the Doge cuts started to come, it wasn't clear that it was Doge, but they did cut that grant as part of this right sizing of the budget, which ended up losing people's income working on this, and these historical markers were lost. And those markers range from Night Swiss and T Cells, the screen printing company that was hiring people who were facing discrimination because they had HIV/AIDS, to the Ohio Lesbian Archives, to the Ruby Girls, a Ohio drag troupe that were raising millions for HIV. And that's just, 3 out of the 10. One of them was even like Ohio LGBTQ plus media. So all of these history markers were not installed. I believe the Ohio History Connection did signal that they wanted to try to find a way to install some of these, get some grant funding back to work on this, though I don't know of any updates on that just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We should say with full transparency, number 10 of 10 was supposed to be one that honored 50 years of LGBTQ plus publications in Ohio. And obviously, as an LGBTQ plus Ohio newsroom, I was pretty excited for that one, but then it got cut. Because I will never pass up the opportunity to learn about someone I didn't know about previously. Zackory, can you tell us about Pauli Murray, who I learned about through you?
Does anybody else know about Pauli on the call?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know,
of
my
course.
God.
Yeah.
Pauli Murray is one of like the most unsung heroes in the span of American history. Specifically, we're focused on the judiciary. Pauli Murray was a hero to Thurgood Marshall, was a hero to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Both of them used the work of Pauli Murray in terms of how they crafted their judicial rulings from the bench. Pauli Murray was Black, queer, and non-binary before we even had the language for it here in this country. Born in 1910 in the Jim Crow South, Pauli Murray was truly brilliant beyond measure. They were the first Black person to earn a doctorate of law from Yale. They laid the legal groundwork that Thurgood Marshall used in the Brown v. Board of Education ruling, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg credited Pauli's work as a foundation of her gender equality arguments. Now, imagine how, that impact. But it even goes beyond that, because Pauli wasn't just this brilliant legal mind. Pauli was also a poet and a priest, okay? A priest. They became the first Black woman, one of the very first LGBTQA plus people ordained in the Episcopal Church. And even though now that's not so different or odd for that denomination, it certainly was groundbreaking when Pauli did it. Again, we owe so much to their work, their activism, their impact, and how they were able to push through barriers and boundaries that nobody had done before. So that's Pauli Murray. So if you don't know them, take some time and do some research. You will be, I think, inspired by that.
There was a great documentary out last year about Pauli, or in the last couple of years. And then is it Durham that has the Pauli Murray Center? There's a Pauli Murray Center at their alma mater. And then I really think it's Durham, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's the Pauli Murray Center for History and Social Justice, I think. So there's so much information there. And also another cool thing is that she was the first person perceived female to graduate from Howard University. So, I mean, all these first, she was one of the founders of the National Organization for Women. Often we get that left out of the media. So, and I'm using she, but I'm thinking they pronouns are probably more common at this point for the work that Pauli did. But yeah, no, amazing.
I'll need to look into them.
Same. We're going to do it together in the newsroom, Ben. We're going to do that. Well, we got some amazing feedback from last week's segment of our roundtable guests shouting out stories of queer joy that caught their eye this week. So we're doing it again. And I suspect this is going to be a regular segment where we take some time out to talk about stories of queer joy. Ben, let's start with you. What story of queer joy popped out at you this week?
Well, I'm going to be a little selfish and say my story on an Ohio couple navigating a mixed orientation marriage is my queer story of the week. It is two people in Ohio who were married for a long time, and then the husband came out as gay to his wife. But that situation, which for many people would think that how can that work out, for them it worked out. It became a source of strength, and now they have a third member to their family, which is the husband's boyfriend. So it's just a wonderful story of joy and overcoming a lot of struggles to find like strength and happiness in your relationship. Very unique one.
And I swear I did not pay him to hype a Buckeye Flame story, but you can find that at thebuckeyeflame.com. Zackory Kirk, give me a story of queer joy that caught your eye.
Well, you know what? Let me give some. Listen, one thing that I've done a lot of is criticize Chapel Rowan, and I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm going to continue to criticize Chapel and continue to hold her accountable for what she says and what she does, period. But I will use this platform to give her a kudos and a shout out and something that is bringing queer joy in the fact that she is going to donate $1 per ticket to trans youth charities on her mini fall tour, right? So thank you to Chapel for giving back to the community that has given so much to her.
There it is. Diane Anderson-Minshall, give me a story of queer joy that caught your eye.
My queer joy is going to sound like it's not joy, but it really is. So I'm old. So that means a lot of my contemporaries and my heroes are passing away right now. And one of them, just this, brilliant woman that I gave an award to a few years ago when I was the editor at The Advocate, and we gave her a Hall of Fame award, but that is Jewel Ty Williams. She passed away recently at 86, but let me relive Jewel's story. She created the Catch One disco in Los Angeles, and it was really a sanctuary because that at the time when she created it in the 70s, they weren't letting Black folks into the clubs in West Hollywood generally. A lot of the clubs in West Hollywood were, much more racist, and they had to deal with police raids. So she created this studio, and then basically everybody came to it, and it was like an antidote to the West Hollywood clubs. And it became one of the most revered clubs in the country. It was attended by, everybody of all skin colors and sexualities, and people like Donna Summer and Sylvester and Chaka Khan performed there, and, Sharon Stone and Janet Jackson mingled in. I mean, there was no cameras inside so that paparazzi didn't get shots of celebrities, but it was like everybody was welcome. And Madonna threw an album release party there, I remember, with male exotic dancers in Swarovski crystal encrusted cod pieces. So
as you do.
As one does for a birthday party. And then also at the same time, it was a community center, like as the AIDS crisis took over, for anybody who doesn't know this listening to the podcast, when the AIDS crisis really hit us, it was lesbians who stepped up and stepped in to help take care of gay men in many instances. So it was this really unique time because the communities prior to AIDS had not been very aligned in many cases. So she was one of those people who, during the height of AIDS, she set out cots, and she created a soup kitchen in the parking lot, and they would run drag charity balls for money to pay for medication and housing and stuff like that. She helped start the Minority AIDS Project. And then later, she and her wife created Ruse House, which was I think it was the country's first housing facility for women and their kids who had HIV or AIDS. And it just kind of went on from there. The stuff that she did, it's sort of legendary. But thinking back to it and thinking back to my days at Catch One, because I was such a kid back then, the just amounts of joy there were in being in this sea of people with so much diversity, but all just having a good time and kind of forgetting about all of the crap around us during these, what I think was those like Reagan Bush years, and much more perilous political fights that we had back then that we haven't had until now. So remembering those kinds of moments of queer joy and how important they are for us all to have now, even as we're fighting to keep democracy from falling, they are critical because they don't want you to live, but living, resilience, taking care of yourself, that is step one as an activist, continuing to live.
Give us her name one more time.
Sure. It's Jewel Ty Williams, Thais Williams, hyphenated. Yeah. And her wife was named Ruth.
And every now and then someone says something on the episode that I know instantly I'm going to have to explain to my mother, Terry Schneck, when she listens in this week. And I already know it's going to be crystal encrusted cod pieces. So thank you for that, Diane. And finally, the Association of LGBTQ plus journalists have announced their full list of 2025 Excellence in Journalism Award recipients. Before we get to our final queer question, Diane, you wrote a piece more than 5 years ago about how LGBTQ plus journalists are more important than ever. Here, 5 years later, do you still feel that is the case?
Yeah, I feel it even more strongly then and even more than I could have imagined 5 years ago. I think right now we're facing multiple fronts. We're facing the fact that in the last 5 years, we've had even more mass conglomeration of journalism media outlets, more control by social media outlets, and fewer independent outlets. And then the advent of AI on the one hand. In the second hand, the pre-capitulation of media to what is becoming a autocracy at the very least. And then at the same time, his continuing to sue journalists out of existence or out of their jobs seems to be a grand pivot and a grand plan for the Trump era. And this is their first year, and they've already gotten billions out of media outlets. And we've already seen what that does and how that stifles journalism. So I think we've got multiple threats out there. We're going to need to think of different ways. I'm thinking myself of like how more and more people are going back to analog types of media. This might be the time for LGBTQ magazines to make a return because it is something that can't be controlled by social media. It can't be eliminated by AI, that kind of thing. They're saying the projections in terms of AI, I don't want to be I certainly have used AI myself, not to write, but to just research. They're saying the problem with AI right now, and this is the problem I've been saying the whole time about all of the websites that are owned by gay media, most of them have gone to where they are following page views, they're following clicks, they're following page views now, and those are adjacent to advertisers they expect to pay big money. Well, at this moment, advertisers pulling out and their traffic's gone way down because of AI. Because basically now with Gemini giving Google summaries at the very top, the majority of people have already stopped clicking down to the actual articles in Google results. So what they're saying now, within just a few years, is the majority of people will get their answers from AI, and the AI will be the only thing actually reading people's websites, even the news websites.
All right, back to magazines.
Right? You think about how can we get around that? And journalists need to be thinking of different things that can't be replaced with that.
Well, my final question for you all, what non-writing award, so we're not talking about these Excellence in Journalism awards, but what non-writing award would you most like to win? It cannot be in any way connected to journalism. Zackory Kirk, what non-writing award would you like to win?
Give me the Nobel Prize. Give me the Nobel Prize for peace, damn it. Let's bring some peace to this world. Let's get a free and autonomous Palestine. Let's ensure the safety and security of Israel in every single country. And let's all come together in love and harmony and wrapped up in one big ass gay flag.
There it is. Ben Jodway, what non-journalism award would you like to win?
This is going to be on the incredibly opposite side of the spectrum. I want to win whatever that competition was in The Wizard for the Nintendo Power Glove.
Oh.
I want to win that. I think that'd be cool.
That is a throwback that I didn't even know you had. So we have a lot to talk about in the car ride back to the newsroom. Diane, what non-journalism? You've already won all the journalism awards, Diane. What non-journalism award would you like to win?
Okay, first of all, I have not gotten into the NLGJA Hall of Fame, and I swear to God, I just want to not die before that happens. But I did cross my head what non-writing one, and I just don't have many skills, so there's not many. But I executive produced my first film today, first feature film this year. It's called By the Roots, and it's got Ali Sheedy and Margaret Cho and Brant Doherty and Emily Robinson. And so I would be happy if it won any award at the Academy.
Perfect.
Oh, we could win an Oscar. That'd be great.
Well, we'll take it. We'll take the Oscar. I cannot express to you how I would be a puddle of goo were I to ever meet Ali Sheedy. But first, let's talk, before that happens, that unlikely event, let's talk about the stories that you all are working on. Diane, what's coming up for you other than this movie, which it sounds like that's what's coming up for you?
Yeah, I've got book projects. It's been a few years since I've written a book, and I'd like to, have more than 5. So, but I'd like to do some nonfiction work. So I've got actually 2 things that I'm working on, and they are around crime and LGBTQ folks.
Nice. All right. Ben Jodway, what's coming up for you?
I've plugged the Buckeye Flame enough, but I do have one story coming out about a gay beekeeper. And besides that, and this isn't for the Buckeye Flame, but there should be a freelance article coming out soon about a trans women only gamer group in a military simulation game that I'm going for a independent publication that should be really interesting.
Amazing. And one day Nobel laureate Zackory Kirk, what are you working on?
Lots of great content coming out. So for those of you who are watching, you can follow. You can, of course, read the color section Substack because again, there's a lot of colors here. But my content, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at The Zactivist. And so I have a lot of really good interviews, very insightful interviews with a number of our Democratic leaders in Congress. So I'm going to drop 3 per day over the course of the next couple of weeks, including what's up next is Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who really did a really great job of kind of framing like the work she's done and which bill she feels of the 19 that she's helped sponsor or co-sponsor will have the greatest impact on improving the lives of the American people and how we have to continue to push forward, especially in regards to healthcare. So I'm really excited about that dropping. And I think that's like the next big thing, but there's just a lot of good content that's going to continue to drop because again, there's big news happening every day. And that's exactly what I do on social media.
That's awesome.
Incredible conversation this week, everybody. I want to thank this week's roundtable, Ben Jodway from the Buckeye Flame, Diane Anderson-Minshall from the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics, and Zackory Kirk, who is both proud of me and also from 3+1 Media. Thank you all for joining me this week.
Thanks to meet you guys. Thanks for having us, Ken.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Ken Schneck, editor of the Buckeye Flame, and that's all we have time for this week. If you liked this episode of This News is So Gay, please share it with a friend, rate and review it on your favorite podcasting app, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on our next episode. In the meantime, read LGBTQ+ news, share the stories of LGBTQ+ reporters, and support the work of LGBTQ+ newsrooms. Until next week, friends.